remember where my stuff is.
Okay. So we have just opened the doors. Welcome everyone to ONREIA, our April event. Hard to believe it's April. It feels like this year is going a little quicker than last April when the time was dragging with the pandemic, but here we are a year later. All right, so as you join us, I can see people starting to flood in here. So as you come on in, you'll see at the bottom, we have the chat section. So why don't you click on that and say hello and let us know where you are joining us from. You'll notice there, Shawn and I are in different screens this time. We're in different countries at the moment. So come on in, and we're going to give it a few minutes to let everyone join. Welcome if you're joining us on Facebook. I am just going to double check that we are going live.
This is the first one that you've done in a few, Jen, where you haven't had a palm tree behind you.
I know. Okay.
Such a rough life, eh, Jen?
It's the life of an investor, right?
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. And no, at least I know there's going to be no tarantulas creeping up behind me. Like,
yes, that's true.
Oh, man. Yes. Back in Ontario, Shawn is in Florida at the moment. And let's see where we have some other people coming in from. Hi, Fanny. Fanny's joining us from London. Daryl is in Ontario. Daryl, are you? I feel like you're London too, or maybe St. Thomas, somewhere around there. Am I right? I don't know. Yeah. Don't be shy, guys. Put in the chat where you're joining us from as you come on in. London, Alex. Yeah. Alex in Nova Scotia. Excellent.
It's a cross Canada group. Here we go.
Yeah. Well, I know we opened the doors a little bit early, so we'll give it a couple minutes. But yeah, too bad, Shawn, you don't have a window behind you. We can see the nice palm trees where you are.
No, I'm stuck inside doing work.
I feel so bad for you.
I'll have you know we're still skiing in Alberta. So I was skiing
wow.
last weekend with my wife. So yeah, until May. The first couple of weeks in May, it's higher elevation. You know, you take your gondola for about 20 minutes before you get to the base of the mountain. So the season is stretched a bit longer. So that's cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Very cool. That's one thing we didn't get to do this year was any skiing. No. Our oldest is 14. He was a little disappointed, but I mean, he got to go to the beach every day for 2 months. So that was the trade-off.
Yeah, not bad either. So that's for sure.
Okay. So people can't see. It looks like it's set up that participants are just responding to the panelists. So how do I change that? Can I change that in the chat?
I don't know if I think it might have been in the setup, Jen, if I'm not mistaken.
Let's see. There we go. I think that would that work? Okay. I think everyone can see that now.
Yeah, you should be able to change it from panelists to attendees. Is that?
I believe I've changed it. Yeah, people are saying yes, we can see it now. Awesome. So as you're joining us, tell us where you are joining from. I am in metropolitan Innerkip right now. Giant village of how many people? 1,000?
3.
We've got Sonia. Hi, Sonia. Nice to see you. I grew up with Sonia. Did a bunch of modeling with Sonia in Cambridge. Julie in Ottawa. Hello from KW. Come on in. Let us know where you're coming from. Brampton. We have Jenny. Shawn in London. Excellent. Keep coming in, guys. Angela in London. Perfect. We're going to give everyone a few more minutes here just to come on in. Keep telling us where you're joining from. And I want to welcome everyone. We have a great topic tonight. It's something that Shawn and I have personally been really looking forward to. And judging from how many people registered, we had over 200 register for tonight's event. So clearly there is a lot of interest in learning about how to purchase, how to start investing in apartment buildings, and how to finance them. So looking forward to that. Now, as everyone rolls in, I am going to do what I typically do every month and just sort of tell everyone a little bit more about ONREIA, because every month we get quite a number of people who've never been to an ONREIA event before. So if you've heard me say this before, you could tune out for just a couple minutes. But so Shawn and I, my name is Jenn. The gentleman, I don't know which box you'd be looking at, but this is Shawn that's waving. Shawn is my husband. We are real estate investors just outside of London, Ontario. And about 3 years ago now, we decided to create ONREIA. And we did it because we wanted for ourselves to learn more education, learn more about real estate investing. We wanted to hear from investors who were actually doing it, right? People who were actually investing and not just standing on a stage somewhere talking about real estate investing, but people who were doing the various strategies that we wanted to learn more about. And at the time, there was no one doing that in our area. We were always having to drive to Toronto or Burlington to go to these events. So we decided to bring it to our area, just around London. We had been doing them in person, but of course, since COVID, we have now been doing these online for about a year. You'd think I'd be better at Zoom by now, but
Crazy, it's been a year already that we've been doing it.
I know, but I mean, we're taking the good with the bad, right? Unfortunately, we can't be in person, but we have Pierre-Paul joining us, who would not probably be able to join us so easily, being that he is in Alberta and we are here in Ontario. So anyway, with ONREIA, there's really 3 pillars. There's 3 really important pieces to our group that we're really proud of, that we've developed. The first pillar of ONREIA is really connecting people. That's something that we wanted this platform, this community for, is to be able to help you to connect. Now, like I said, we're doing this online. It's a lot more challenging. So what I'm going to have you do, as you keep saying hello and you get active in the chat, I want you to make note of where various people are joining us from, right? If you see someone, for example, Donna and Fernando, they're in Barrie. If you're in the Barrie area, why don't you make a note of who these people are, and maybe go onto Facebook, go onto Instagram, see if you can find these people and connect. I mean, it sounds a little bit, I don't want to say creepy, but this is what we have as a way of networking now, right? Is to try and connect with people online instead of in person, like we would normally be doing at our meetings. So get active in the chat. Please get active. If something resonates with you, or if you hear something and you're like, wow, that's a great point, make sure you put it in the chat. Okay. Now, if you have a question, there's a different section. So if you look at the bottom, you'll see a Q&A area. That's where we want all of your questions going. If you put your question in the chat, chances are it's going to get lost. So put your questions in the Q&A, put all your comments in the chat. And for those of you who are still rolling in, make sure you say hello. Tell us where you're joining us from, okay? Hey, Kim from Guelph. So next up, another part of ONREIA is, of course, educating investors and educating people who are not yet investors. This isn't for, the high level investor, and our group isn't for the brand new, it's for absolutely everybody. So, if you have a question, don't feel like you can't ask it because you're new. There are, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I sent Pierre-Paul the list, sort of a breakdown of how many people are brand new, how many people are advanced. Do you have the list right there?
Yes. So 23 people are full-time investors. 64, well, this is before, I think the numbers kept going up, but when you sent them to me, 64 consider themselves intermediate level. They have a portfolio, but they still have a job 9 to 5. 59 people consider themselves still new to investing, and 31 people are brand new to investing and haven't done a deal yet.
Wow, pretty even. Well dispersed group.
Yep.
Yes, it's very even crew out tonight. So just know that you're in good company, no matter what level of investor you are. You're not the only one. Okay, so make sure you ask your questions and you get comfortable chatting in the chat box. With education, as always, we ask that you do your own due diligence. We are here to provide you information, but we want you to take that and, of course, do your own due diligence with that before you move forward in any kind of a deal. The third pillar of ONREIA is really inspiring action. We don't want this to be just another webinar, just another hour and a half that you sit and you take in information and do nothing with. Because if you're not going to do anything with this, nothing's going to change. So we want you to take what you learn and apply it. Now I'm going to ask you, as you're all still saying hello in the chat, I'm going to invite someone who attended our last ONREIA event. If you attended back in March, put in the chat something that you did in your business that moved your business forward. Maybe should we do a little giveaway for everyone that does this, Shawn?
Sure.
We'll do a little giveaway. I want you guys to get active in there. So Shawn, I want you to put something in there too. What did you do? Actually, you could put like a list. What are some things that you've done in the past month that has moved your business forward? Sharon Incorporated. Sharon, you are getting a book. Sharon Armstrong. I'm going to connect with you after the event is over and I'm sending you a book. Awesome. Good job. Keep going though. I want to see more. So what else have you done in the past month that has moved your business forward? So that's a little bit about ONREIA. Okay. Okay. What time do we have here? 7:09. So tonight, is there anything I'm missing, Shawn? I feel like there was something I missed.
No, I think you're doing great. I'm trying to type this in so I can get a free book. So I'm just trying to. No, I think you're doing well, and really what it's about is community, and it's about being around like-minded people. It's a small group of people that are actually investors in society, right? And it's a very small subsection. So it's nice to be around people who are doing the same things and people that are, uplifting, and they're going to cheer you on, and they're going to be there to help you along. And that's what we want to do, is we want to give advice, and we want to give, education and networking opportunities for people. And we can only do it once a month, but it's a good platform to be able to share that with you guys.
Exactly. I'm just going to go through the chat here. Some of the other things that people have done. Bruce funded 100% LTV mortgage. William has bought a property. William, was that your first property? What number was that? And is it a flip or a rental? Fanny, I incorporated my business and did some public speaking. Awesome. Donna and Fernando made an appointment with Cherry Chan. Excellent. Cherry was one of our guest speakers last month.
Yeah.
Janetta bought a duplex, doing another rent to own. Fantastic.
Another one with Cherry.
Pardon me?
Another person with Cherry.
Oh, look at that. Yes. Oh, awesome. Keep going, guys. Keep putting those in. Alex bought his first flip in Cole Harbor. Yay!
There you go, Alex.
Refinanced a project and paid investors off. Awesome. Keep going, guys. We want to be able to celebrate your wins and celebrate the action that you've taken in your business. So that's awesome. Okay, so we're going to keep moving forward because I know Pierre-Paul has a lot of content to share with us this evening. So I am going to do a little introduction here. So Pierre-Paul is Canada's leading authority and insider when it comes to investing in apartment buildings because of his unique perspective on this type of investment. He is a former CMHC multifamily underwriter and a full-time multifamily investor with a portfolio of 130 doors valued in excess of 20 million. He's analyzed hundreds of apartment deals in 3 provinces and 3 territories, and he's analyzed more apartment buildings than most of the largest landlords in the country. I think we have the right person in the room right now to be talking about apartments. So I'm really excited to have Pierre-Paul join us this evening. He is going to, we're basically giving him the reins and he has the whole evening. So please, like I mentioned before, make sure you put your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. And we're going to get to those. We may not get to the questions as soon as you ask them, but we will make sure we go back and make sure that we get your questions asked. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Pierre-Paul. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen, for having me, and Shawn for having me. A couple of things. I miss not seeing people's faces. As Jen said, and Shawn know as well, I used to be a speaker until the pandemic, and I used to go out to Ontario quite a bit. I went to school to Ontario, in Ontario. I got a degree from the U of T, my first degree. That's where I learned English, and from Ottawa U. So I'm quite familiar with Ontario. I have siblings in Ontario as well, and lots of friends. But before I get started, I have a few rituals to ground ourselves. And my goals are very similar to those of Shawn and Jen, in the sense that I'm an educator, sharing my knowledge, insider knowledge that I got at CMHC. But, you know, I want to acknowledge our humanity. I always carry this little gratitude rock that I picked up on the shores of Lake Titicaca in Peru 5 years ago with an adventure trip with my oldest son, who's now 23. You know, living in a state of gratitude, because there's a lot of people suffering, perhaps some of you tonight. So I just, you know, hang tough. This shall pass at some point, this crazy pandemic. So, but thank you for having me. I also am grateful for being able to share my knowledge with you. I don't take this for granted, and I'm going to be very much available to answer all your questions and help you out on your journey to invest in apartment buildings of 5 or more units. That's what we're talking about tonight. The cutoff is really 5 or more units is what I'm talking about. It's a different kettle of fish altogether, as we'll see tonight. So my topic tonight is how to source apartment buildings, you know, and how to finance them. And when I was preparing this presentation, the first thing I think I'm going to start with is to let you know that because it's such a different kettle of fish, you need to, and I guess I should switch to my presentation now, you need to prepare yourself. Investing in multifamily properties is not something you can start overnight, all right? So that's the first thing that you need to understand. Why? Because the stakes are a lot higher, clearly. The number of stakeholders that you're going to be dealing with is a lot more finite, unlike many of you, you know, based on the stats that we were sharing earlier, who's watching tonight. Many of you are probably investing in smaller rental properties, 1 to 4 units, and you're probably tired of that because, and I think I even remember you, Shawn, maybe saying this to Mark Loeffler in your interview. Now, once you move over to bigger stuff, you realize you can make more money for a lot less effort. I mean, you do need more capital. I cannot dispute that, but you get a wealth multiplier effect, which I'll talk about. But it comes with also its challenges. But I think now Jen and Shawn are well on their way of, you know, I don't know how many multifamily properties you own, but I know that's what you do now. You focus a lot on that. The benefits, the advantages are definitely commensurate with the level of effort that you put in. My lifestyle, like Shawn and Jen, you know, well, maybe not during the pandemic, but my family and I, we like to travel, and we're all travelers. My older kids, I have 3 kids, speak 3 languages, French, English, and Spanish. So this is lifestyle. That's what real estate gives us. So planning, in order to get into multifamily investing of 5 or more units, you need to plan. You can't just jump into it overnight. Go straight to sourcing, right? In a moment, I'll talk about the best way to source apartment buildings. To find them is obviously through a realtor, but any realtor you're gonna talk to, doesn't matter where in Canada, by the way. No, like I said, until the pandemic, I used to travel across Canada speaking. It doesn't matter which realtor you talk to, they're gonna expect you to have done your homework. Tire kickers, not allowed in the world of multifamily investing, all right? You know, the data, the level of professionalism that is expected of you is significant. So the better you plan and research your market, I'm gonna give you some pointers on how to do that. Although, you know, from a market analysis point of view, it's the same. Like real estate investing is the same. You're looking for fundamentals, strong fundamentals in the market. But my point to you is, you know, if you don't plan ahead of time, the doors will not open. The realtors are not going to want to talk to you. So I'm going to list a bunch of questions that you need to answer for yourself before you get moving, okay? Understand as well that the process of planning and researching your market and your property, and I'm going to give you some pointers on how to determine what type of property and what size of property that you need to consider. But it's not a linear process. Depending where you're investing, and I teach for everybody in Canada, not just Southern Ontario has a high population, but some people sometimes will invest in smaller markets like the Prairie, even further north, Kirkland Lake, North Bay, just to pick a few smaller markets in Ontario. And you say, oh, I want a 10-unit building with all 2 bedrooms. Well, you may not find that, right? You might have to accommodate what's been built in terms of multifamily properties in that market. So the point here I'm making to you is you start with a certain idea in mind of property type, size, and market. And then when you go out and explore the marketplace, you may not find exactly what you have. All right. So a few things that you need to understand. So in other words, the realtor that you may approach, or the realtors, may not be able to find exactly what you want. But the point I'm making here, before I get into the meat of stuff, it's not a linear process, and you need to think it through, okay? Because the moment you contact a realtor to say, this is what I'm looking for, they are expecting you to have done your homework. Otherwise, the doors will be shut. And I think Shawn and Jenn know, but maybe some of the people on this webinar tonight, I've been doing this for a long time. Started in 2008 speaking across Canada with REIN, and I've since spoken in front of a lot of real estate associations across Canada. And it's always the same, but the people that try to start investing in multifamily properties and that haven't done their homework get the doors shut on their nose right away. All right. Like I said, the first thing that you need to understand is it's a specialized world, the world of multifamily. So when you go out and pick your team members, they have to be a multifamily specialist. The reason I'm saying this, and let me go back to my introduction earlier. So I was a CMHC multifamily underwriter. I worked for CMHC for 14 years. And, the first thing that I found out is the investors that were not working with a multifamily specialist, namely a mortgage broker or a realtor, their level of stress was going through the roof. And when I was getting an application that wasn't put together, like a financing application for an apartment building that wasn't put together by a professional multifamily player, guess where that financing application would go on my pile? It'd go to the bottom of my pile. So if you're the investor and you've got somebody on your team, whether it's a realtor or a mortgage broker that's not prepared, your level of stress is going to go through the roof, and you got to remove conditions and all of that on your offer to purchase. So I couldn't insist enough. This is not like small rental properties where if it doesn't work out with a realtor or a lender, at the BMO on the corner of the street, you can move on. It's a much more finite world. There's less lenders, there's less mortgage brokers and all of that. So big caveat. The other reason why it's important as well, every move that you make, and I'm not trying to scare you, my stuff, I teach experiential. When I teach this material, we analyze case studies. My job as an educator in this field is to give you as close of a feeling and understanding of what it's like in the real world if you want to be successful at investing in multifamily properties. One of the things is that because it's a finite world, as you take action, you are building your reputation, all right? And you want to be seen as a professional multifamily investor, be seen as a closer, precisely not as a tire kicker. And I'm speaking from experience from wannabe multifamily investors that wasted a realtor's time and they were blacklisted. So this is what I'm warning you against. So, but again, if you work with a multifamily specialist, from the realtor, a mortgage broker, property inspector, engineer that will do your environmental site assessment, which is an obligation. The lender needs that. It's going to go a long way. They'll have your back and they'll reassure you and they'll help you build your confidence. Key questions that you're going to need to ask yourself. I wrote this ebook a few years ago, and it's 5 key questions that you need to answer before you make a move in multifamily, investing. And basically, there are these questions here. How much capital do you have? right? What type and size of property do you want? Which market are you interested in? You got to be specific there, right? What level are you willing to put in? I remember my first building, well, no, my second. It was a 17-unit building. It was a silent investor. So I was just putting in my money with a good friend of mine, and we bought this building, did very well. We did 34% cash on cash return on investment in 5 years, or 6 years. That was great. I was it was an armchair investment. I didn't have to do anything. But my second one, which I was the managing partner, I found the deal. I wrote the offer to purchase, and I was managing it myself. But I made sure that the type of property, which we're going to look at these various types in a second, it was a Class B kind of project that didn't require too many upgrades. Because I was still at CMHC's employment full time. I was a multifamily underwriter at that time, yes. Then my kids were much younger. They needed my attention a lot more than now. So that's the kind of stuff that you have to think through before you approach the stakeholders, and in particular, the realtors, right? They have to be a multifamily specialist realtor. It's going to also help you, answering these questions is going to help you figure out how much financing you're going to need, how much capital. And we'll expand on that in a moment. And let's start now. Property size, what do I mean by that? Well, obviously, it's the number of units in the building, right? We always talk about apartment buildings or multifamily properties. And again, I'm talking about bigger stuff, 5 or more units, as the number of doors that you want. So the property size will determine how much capital you're going to need. The more doors within the building, the greater the amount of capital you're going to need to acquire it, right? And financing, as you'll see in a moment, is completely different when you move to the bigger stuff, 5 or more units, as we'll see. So that's what we're talking about here. When you buy larger properties, there's some significant advantages, namely that you get a better return on investment because you have better economies of scale, okay? But like I said, larger apartment buildings will require more capital on your part. Hence, it might be more challenging for you to qualify. But I always say to my students, and we're business owners, the majority of us, like looking at the list that Jenn sent me, you guys who are watching this webinar, what are we? Business leaders. We're entrepreneurs. And believe you me, my coming out as an entrepreneur occurred in 2010 when I left CMHC, right? We are problem solvers. And when there's a problem, my big sister, I'm number 9 of a family of 12, typical French Canadian family in some mining town in northwestern Quebec. My oldest sister always says, when there's a problem, there's always a solution. If you cannot find the solution, that means what? You're part of the problem. Let that sink for a moment. If, like me, you have kids, teach them to be problem solvers. That's where the money is. That's where the freedom is. And that's the joy of life, stepping outside of your comfort zone. And definitely investing in larger apartment buildings. You're talking about multi-million-dollar hard assets. You have to step outside of your comfort zone. And all of us can do this. You don't have to be a former CMHC underwriter. Look at Jenn and Shawn. They're not former multifamily underwriter at CMHC. So you don't have to have the kind of knowledge that I'm blessed to have to be successful at it. Okay. So if you don't qualify, which generally speaking, and again, like Jenn said earlier, I really appreciate the comment that you made, Jenn, about people conducting their own due diligence, that you don't take any responsibility. Well, I can make the same comment later when I'm talking about financing, because I'm going to be talking about general underwriting guidelines. And when I use the word underwriting, I mean by that assessing the investment risks and mitigating them. Okay. Well, I can share some general guidelines with you that how the banks and CMHC will look at your deal, but at any moment they have full discretion to apply a different rule based on their perception of the risk profile of you as an investor and your deal and your market area and so on. All right. But generally speaking, if you want to qualify for financing for an apartment building, and we'll come back to that in a moment, you need to have 25% of the loan amount in personal net worth. If you don't, I was lucky to have that at the onset because I live on an acreage and I got the net worth to do that. If you don't, then the solution is what? Go and find a joint venture partner to help you qualify. It's to combine personal net worth of the investors, the shareholders, that can enable you to qualify. All right. So don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself. You got to raise your financial mental thermostat and your ability to find a solution. Okay. When you choose the property, this is the property size. Obviously, you want to consider the kind of suite mix that you want. You want more bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms? Many of us, most of us that I know, and I'm thinking back in my days as an underwriter, plus all my friends and my students that buy apartment buildings, many of us like to have a nice mix of 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. Although I do one investor from the West Coast likes apartment building deals with a lot of the bachelors because he's figured out that on a per square foot basis, he's making more money. Okay. I don't want to get into that. Maybe later, if you want to have me to dig deeper into this, but when you have larger bedroom types in your building, you will have more occupants on a per unit basis, right? Which means what? Your operating expenses, namely your utility costs, are going to be higher. All right. So that impacts your net operating income. Okay. So these are the things, you know, if you're following me. Are you following me, Jen? I think people are following me. It makes sense what I'm saying. You gotta think these things through before you approach realtors. You want to think about that, right? You also want to look at the size of the units, depending what the market wants, what renters, what tenants want. But if the units, let's say you've got a 2-bedroom unit, but it's like, about 500 square feet. That's very tiny for a 2-bedroom. Is that what the market wants? Is that what the tenants want? So you want to pay attention to that as well. Suite size as well. And all of this stuff is going to be transposed into your financing application. Like I'm literally, when I'm speaking now, I'm speaking as an underwriter who is now a full-time investor, and my brain is trained to analyze all these things because I know the bank is going to want to know, or CMHC if I go and insure the loan with CMHC. All right, everybody with me? Jen, can you look at the chat box? Is everybody following? That way I don't have to switch between screens with my presentation. Are you guys good?
Yes, it looks like everyone is following along. There was a question about, we can talk about it later. Everyone, so far, it looks like everyone's following along.
Okay. Yeah, that's all we're asking. We'll open the floor for 2 questions later, sorry. But I just want to make sure you're following me, my logic here, because it is, let me just pull this here.
Tony says you're doing amazing. Jay says, yep, following along.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Just because just my setup, I do this quite a bit too. So I've got also a webinar tomorrow night. I've got the setup that I have. I cannot see the chat box while I'm sharing my screen. So thank you, Jen, for being there for me. Just to give you an idea, this is the entire flow chart of investing in multifamily properties. There's a lot of, I got all these charts and stuff. I'll talk to you about that later. But the point is all these things add up. One piece goes into the next one and so on. And then at the end of the day, you apply for financing. So I am on topic. I just want to make sure that you're following me. There's a reason why I'm saying this. I'm mentioning all these things. All right. So again, choosing your property size is going to help you focus your search. So hence the reason why you need to think about this in advance. All right. But, buying the buying process, here's something. And please, I'm like I appreciate your introduction again, Jen, because our job as educators is to open your mind, open your hearts, and bust limitations and limiting beliefs that you may have. Hence that point that I'm making here. The buying process is the same regardless of the size. So you want an apartment building. Now you know that the bigger, the better, not just in your sex life. But no, sorry, I shouldn't have said that, but I had to throw a little funny one there. Bigger is better. Why? Because you have better economies of scale. Okay. So that's important. Okay. Better return on investment, but you do, on the other hand, need more capital. Now, that was the property size. Now, what about the property type? I alluded to that. We're talking about the type, the condition that the asset is going to be in. All right. What's the state of repair of that multifamily properties? And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the various classes of buildings. Is it class A, B, C, or D, right? Class A being the newest, the most prestigious apartment buildings. They have high standard finishes, state-of-the-art systems. Maybe they have a gym, they have office space and stuff like that. They're the kind of buildings of the best, that the large, institutional investors go after, right? They're visible in the marketplace, all right? They're obviously more expensive, right? More capital is required to buy them because they're newer and less maintenance required. just to give you an idea, it's not the point of the talk tonight, but when you go and buy a brand new building or a fairly new building, you can imagine that that building has all newer building systems, high efficiency, high energy efficiency systems, and so on. Your operating expenses on a brand new building, in terms of percentage of operating expenses, is going to be about 25% of your income, versus if you buy an older building like I own buildings built in the 60s, 70s. My operating expense ratio, instead of being 25% of my income, is going to be roughly about 45 to 50%. All right. So I end up, yes, I pay more for a Class A building, but my expenses are significantly lower. Therefore, I make more money. But it's a trade-off. I need more capital up front to acquire it. And then you go down the list to Class B property. Rents are going to be closer to the average range for the area. The building finishes are going to be fair to good for the area. The systems that the building has are adequate, but they clearly do not compete with Class A building. And you go down the list, right? The less expensive as well, clearly, than the Class A building. And you go down the list. So you see my point in your thinking. And of course, the worst class would be D or even E. They're like the decrepit buildings and bad areas, but they're often the cheapest. So is that something that you want? Like, for example, you guys, Jen, you guys are developers, right? You have the wherewithal to go in and renovate a Class D building. You might be up for that. But like I said, for me, I don't have that skill. I don't have a building team. I'm not a carpenter. I don't have that skill. I would not be interested in. So that's kind of in a nutshell what you want to think about. What are your needs? How much time you have to allocate will dictate the property type that you're going to buy. Like, if you want to make money, the best buildings to buy are somewhere between a Class C or a Class B. Guy like me, that's what I buy. Why? They can be fixed. I can go in and look at the numbers and see, is there room to increase my rents? If I do some upgrades, I'm going to look at the operating expenses. Is there ways I can shave, reduce my operating expenses? For example, something that I've done, which is something I'm going to be sharing tomorrow night. By the way, I've got a masterclass tomorrow night. Jen, remind me to mention it, but I'm sure I won't forget. I'm going to be talking about cap rates tomorrow night, right? What I've done in many of my buildings, two of them had only one house meter for power, for electricity. So what I did is I called my good buddy. He's actually in Pickering, Ontario, Priority Submetering with Andrew Beacom. I became friends with him. I shot a video interview on one of my blogs, but he installs electrical power submeters. So now my tenants, on tenant turnover, I said, look, now you have a meter. Your electrical consumption is metered. And I've installed a meter, and either I give you this, rental increase, or you pay for your own electricity as per what you're using. And obviously my rental increase was significantly greater. Well, do you know how much my power bill went down now that the tenants had an incentive to save because they were paying for their own power? 57%. So if you take my masterclass tomorrow night, you'll see that there's a wealth multiplier effect. The value appreciates by a ratio 1 to 16 in areas like Southern Ontario. Can be for every dollar in rental increase in NOI, net operating income, property will appreciate somewhere between $15 to $25. We'll come back to that in a moment. But so you need to understand what you're prepared to do, the level of effort you're prepared to do. But if this is your cup of tea, that you like, for example, Shawn, if I can take Shawn's example, that has the wherewithal, the construction team and all of that, it's fine to take a Class D building, because then he can turn it around, do the improvements, charge higher rents, and maybe fix the operating expenses, thereby making a lot more money. All right. So when you go and approach a realtor, you need to let them know the kind and size of property that you're looking for, how much capital you think you have. And I'm going to give you some pointers in terms of how you start. But again, remember, the process is not linear, right? You have a picture in your mind of the property size and type and market area, but you may have to adapt based on what you discover as you conduct your due diligence, as you research markets and so on. Quickly researching markets and selecting markets. Again, Jen, the only reason I'm including this is because we've got people that have, some of them don't have any experience. So I wanted to flag that. But, this stuff doesn't matter what size of property you buy. Not just larger apartment buildings of 5 or more units, but even the smaller stuff, right? So you want to look, you want to choose a specific geographical area where you're going to find apartment buildings to purchase. And I come from the school of Don Campbell years ago at the Real Estate Investment Network, where I was taught you pound the pavement. You get in your car and you drive and you find out and you get to know a specific neighborhood. And apartment buildings are always in clusters, like on a main artery, off a main artery oftentimes, right? So you cannot skip that step. That's what you've got to do. But you got to look at your market area when you select a market area from the macro perspective as well as the micro perspective. For example, when I say macro would be the bigger picture, I would look at a city maybe, and then at the micro level at a specific neighborhood, okay? Because when you approach the realtor, you got to be able to tell the realtor, well, this is the kind of market area I'm looking for, okay? And sometimes it can be very misleading. You may have a bad city, but within the city you have a great neighborhood, or vice versa. So you got to keep that in mind. Obviously, you want to look for the general demographic drivers, population growth, vacancy rate. You want to buy in a market area where the vacancy rate is fairly low. But again, beggars cannot be choosers sometimes. But you want to market where there's job creation, where there's, people are going to be attracted to live in that area. Maybe major transportation improvements, such as a light rail train system or something like that, right? That will attract tenants. And key financial drivers, average rents are going up, property taxes, rising wages, areas GDP, all the standard stuff that we real estate investors look for. You also want to look at, when you look at an asset, an apartment building, you want to look at its marketability. If there comes a day, and I'm a long-term holder, by the way, we're going to talk about that in a moment. If there comes a day I want to sell my asset, is this an asset that's going to be easy to put back on the market? That's what I mean by marketability, right? Is it in an area, is the apartment building in an area with a historically low vacancy rate, which again reduces the market risk? And then I want to look at the asset, the specific building, and what are current average rents in comparison to the asset that I'm looking at investing in. All right. So these are the kind of things that you want to look at. When you choose a market, you also want to be cognizant of the size of the rental universe. Okay. Sometimes, again, like I don't want to be too centric with large centers like Southern Ontario and GTA, but if you go to a smaller remote market, you say, you tell your realtor, I want to buy a 10, let's say a 20-unit building, which has half of 1 bedrooms and the other half is all 2 bedrooms. Well, in that particular market, they may not have built that specific product that you're looking for, okay? You want to keep in mind as you conduct your due diligence and your research, and I hope I'm not going to offend anybody. Jen, did I tell you I'm very straightforward with it? I have a lot of opinions. So sometimes I may not please everybody, but I'll tell you the way it is. I'm the kind of guy, and I forgot to tell you that I do have a law degree as well before. So a long time ago, I'm not a practicing lawyer. I don't give legal advice, but I am a meticulous kind of a person. So when I conduct my due diligence, it's one thing to get information from a realtor, but I would not rely on that. My point is you need to go to the source, get the information from the vendor directly, okay? Because, realtors are paid on commission at the end of the day, okay? So there's nothing like getting the raw data from the right authority. For example, your job, ideally, and I'm just saying ideally, is before you start knocking on a realtor's door to source properties, I would call a mortgage broker, and now you know that you want to call a mortgage broker who specializes in multifamily properties in the area that you're looking at buying in, ideally. And you want to say, hey, this type and size of property that I'm looking at in that market that I'm exploring and considering buying in, what is the average going cap rate? Okay. It's not the purpose of tonight's webinar. That's tomorrow night. If you want to join me tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about cap rates, which is the main methodology for arriving at a valuation for an apartment building. And the income, your best friend is the NOI, net operating income, not net cash flow. That's after you service your debt, but it's your income before you service your debt. And you want to find out because you're going to have to plug in a number, divide the NOI by the average cap rate for comparable properties in your market area. But before you approach a realtor, because the realtor forma is going to have a cap rate there, right? How they arrived at a valuation at the listing price. So you want to have an idea about these cap rates in advance. Hence the reason that planning and research phase before you make a move into multifamily property investing is an important phase of your process of being successful at it. You also want to know, so you want to know the average cap rates in your market area, and you want to know what properties are selling for on average per door for comparable properties. And because we have some newbies, completely new at real estate investing, by comparable properties, I mean other comparable properties which have recently sold in the marketplace, all right? You don't want to compare a wood frame apartment building with a concrete building, because a concrete building is at a premium, so it's going to have a lower cap rate, all right, meaning a higher value, okay? So you want to have valid comps that are similar in construction type, ideally maybe age and amenities, right? So that's what we're talking about. And you want to figure out for comparable properties to the one that you're looking at investing in or you're trying to find, what are they selling for on a per door basis? This is the lingo that we use in my world, okay? So your source of market data is going to be all these folks: lenders, realtors, mortgage brokers, appraisers, and CMHC. CMHC has a rental market survey every fall, right, that you can consult to find out some of these things, okay? Especially when it comes to the rent, average rents, that's where CMHC. But the mortgage broker can give you an idea, if they are a specialist in their market area and for multifamily properties, of the average going cap rates and value per door. Also, these are multifamily hacks, by the way, that I'm giving you, shortcuts. When it comes to finding out what are properties like the one I'm looking, the type or size I'm looking for or selling for, one of the multifamily hacks is go to the appraiser. Maybe you'll have to pay $500 and say, hey, I'm looking at buying in London, Ontario, a 10-unit apartment building. Can you give me a list of comps, which will have all the details that I mentioned, the construction type and size and cap rate and so on, all right? So there you go. All that to say that by the time you get to sourcing your property, you're a knowledgeable person. And I could not begin, like I've been teaching this since 2008, right? Through various coaching programs and speaking and so on. If you do your homework, it's going to pay immense dividends to you. The doors will open. And I know, because I get these testimonials from my students day in, day out, because people realize, the stakeholders that they're sitting across, the mortgage broker, the lender, the realtor, whoa, you've done your homework. And that is one of the key points about this specific subject in tonight's webinar. Doing your homework will get you a long way to build your reputation. At the end of the day, realtors will be your main source for that. All right. And I've already said all of these things already, but by having done your homework beforehand, before getting to a realtor, right up front, you're going to be put a bit on a pedestal in a higher class of real estate investor and wannabe multifamily investor. It's just the way it is. They have a lot of qualified buyers out there. Like I said, the world of multifamily investing, 5 or more units in apartment buildings, is a lot more finite. Your job is to prove yourself. And it's not rocket science. I just ran you through the process of doing that. But there's no escaping that. You need to do your homework. I couldn't insist on that enough. And I'm speaking again from all the files that I saw at CMHC from non-multifamily specialists that were ill put together. It backfires on people, okay? And you build that relationship with the realtor. You demonstrate that you found out how much the capital that you have. And in a moment, I'm going to show you how to arrive at a first estimate of, it's a rule of thumb. It's not, again, cast in stone, but I would even show them when I approach a realtor, hey, here's the bank statement and a current bank statement showing, hey, I've got $500,000 to buy an apartment building in X area, show them that the money is there. And you probably know that for anti-money laundering things or requirements, that you need to show the banks where the money came from for the last 3 months. This is as a result of 9/11 years ago. That's when everything changed, because they want to make sure that the money is not proceeds from terrorist activities. So you need to show the bank. We're a little off topic, but just as an aside, I think what my recommendation is that you, and by the way, I don't use my own money to buy apartment buildings. Most of my students, I'm trying to think if any of them even ever did have their own money, we use OPM, okay? Once you do your homework and you find a deal that matches, the criteria that you're looking for in a good market with sound market fundamentals and, and so on, you can find people that want to invest in with you and in you. Because it's a very low risk asset. After personal residences, principal residences that we all own, apartment buildings are the second lower risk asset that banks love to lend on. So if you do your homework again, you'll be much, much better equipped to attract capital to acquire apartment buildings. But nurture that relationship, and I would show them that you have the money in the bank. It's sitting there and it's a current bank statement. Okay. Is everybody with me, Jen? Maybe you can look at the chat box.
Yeah, all looks good. Excellent. How are we guys? How are you doing, guys? Why don't we put some comments in the chat box here? How are you?
Oh, hang on, I can see the chat box. It's up there. Look at that. Okay, but not the screen. I got to look down if you don't mind. But I can see the chat box now. No, I can't. No, I can see the Q&A box.
Okay, we've got good, very good, thumbs up. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jen. We didn't plan this, but it helps me because where's the chat box? When I switch screen, I got a bit of a fancy setup here. I got, anyway, a couple of cameras, my laptop, and another monitor. So that's why I can't see the chat box.
You are getting lots of positive feedback here. Everyone is saying, excellent, great presentation. Keep going.
All right, thank you, guys. Yeah, I should have added another monitor. I could have moved the chat box, but next time. Okay, we're good. So you understand the importance, right? So your job when you get to the realtor, ideally, right? I'm always aiming. I'm teaching high standards, just the way I am, and that's what I teach my children as well. How you do anything is how you do everything. So you want to, when you show up in front of a realtor, you've thought these things through, and you kind of pretty much tell them the ideal property that you're looking for, size, the type, etc. Try to have a market that you've chosen by then, and the type of property and how much capital. So I've said all of these. Obviously, I don't need these slides anymore. All right. But that's going to go a long way to build your credibility. And again, appreciate when I give you these pieces of advice is because I've seen it time and time again. When people didn't do that, it backfired on them. Do not waste their time. All right. Some realtors, once you've convinced them that you're prepared, you've done your homework, they will drive you around and help you with market selection and show you some, some properties. But again, you want to be seen as a closer, not a tire kicker. Okay. You can ask them also to another multifamily hack, by the way, and I'm putting all these together in a list. I continue to create new tools to help my students. At the onset, what I would also do when I approach the realtor, I would say, here's my ideal property type, size, with the money that I have and the market that I've chosen and all of that. Could you please start sending me listings? And sometimes at that point, okay, this is a nuance here that I'm bringing, but you may not have all the capital yet, because I don't know about you, Jen and Shawn, what's your process there, but I raise capital privately and very successfully from a small core group of professionals, doctors, dentists, and so on. So I'm pretty good at it, but that's the reason, is because I follow this step-by-step kind of process that I'm teaching only a small portion of it. But so you may not have the capital in the bank account yet, but you can say to the realtor, can you start sending me listings that match my selection criteria that I just mentioned, property size, type, and et cetera, and market area and all of that. What that will do, and obviously this is not the point of tonight's webinar, but I teach that to my students in my workshop. I train their eyes to look at a realtor pro forma, a listing, and look for key financial indicators, right? Like I mentioned one earlier was the operating expense ratio, right? Right off the bat, is it in the ballpark that it should be for a building of that age and construction type? And what are my repair maintenance expenses? What's my insurance on a per unit per annum basis? What's the cost of my insurance? And so on. So that'll give you some free training, just getting used to look at a realtor's listing. Now, again, I hope I'm not insulting anybody, but realtors will be realtors, meaning that they're paid on commission. So they can have a tendency of inflating things to make it look better. Okay. Is that proper, Jen? I didn't insult two people. Do you think? No?
You're totally fine.
Complete. Yeah, and 100% accurate. It's true.
Okay. Oh, you're there, Shawn. We don't see your face anymore. So, okay,
Yeah.
good. I'm sorry. I'm blunt. Look, I've got great, not much to the back. I tell it the way it is. I'm too old for BS. Okay. So
Exactly.
that is how I operate. So, but I'm trying to be gentle at the same time. Okay. All right. So, but that's a big tip though. And that way you get to know your market, right? But don't be a freaking, analysis paralysis. Just look at freaking listings. And like Jen and Shawn said, don't take action. Nah, not good. Not good. Life is too short. You got to take action, right? To have the lifestyle that Jen and Shawn and we have with our families. Okay. So at the end of the day, yes, realtors will be your main source for finding apartment buildings that are connected. However, is there anything preventing you from driving around that your chosen market area and looking for properties that look in bad condition, poorly managed, the grass is really high, and you can obviously see they're needing repairs, and likely maybe the rent is lower than it should be based on average rents in the market area? If you find one of those, even though there's no for sale sign up front, what prevents you from pulling title and knocking on the door and finding out who the owner is? That happens. Absolutely can happen. It's absolutely a possibility. Or I've heard of people, I've never done that, but people putting ads in the newspaper. I'm looking for an apartment, a 10, 15 unit building in X market area. Try it out. But at the end of the day, I can't deny that most vendors or owners that sell their properties will list their property with a realtor. Obviously, networking like this, if you network with people, myself, maybe at some point you can call me. I get the question all the time. Hey, Pierre-Paul, do you want to sell? I got it again last week from a realtor. But somebody could call me, one of my students. Hey, Pierre-Paul, are you interested in selling? So you can also approach that. But at the end of the day, there's no doubt that your key source, your main source of for finding apartments will be realtors. Quickly, estimating the loan amount. So this is not about this workshop or this webinar tonight is about sourcing. So I've addressed that question now. And in a moment, I'm about to get into financing. But at some point, you need to figure out how much money do I need? So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. Which one comes first, right? Well, first, you got to determine the property size that you have. Well, maybe first determine how much money you have, then start looking at a market and figure out, well, what can, let's say, $500,000 buy me in my chosen market, and work your way down to the number of doors that you can get for that down payment of $500,000 or $500,000. All right. There's no perfect route to get to that. You gotta work your way through this. But in terms of a rule of thumb, estimating the required loan amount, you got at some point plug in numbers in the spreadsheet. And again, the math is super simple. But you got to find out what's going on in the marketplace right now. Like, I'm always aware of what our current interest rates being charged by lenders right now on a daily basis from multiple sources. I get rates by, right? I mean, if you're not on that list, you got to get that. It's a daily rate going on. Mind you, they're rates for mostly smaller rental properties or principal residences, but it gives me an idea where the market is going. I also subscribe. So I subscribe. This is a website. You can get their daily interest rate reports, rates by. Then there's Canadian Mortgage Trends as well that I subscribe to. That gives me the lowdown what's going on at the marketplace. I also subscribe to something with one of my lenders, First National. It's maybe I can send that to Jen. You can send it to people. But it's the bond market, whereas the bond market is going. Right, because there's always a spread. They add a spread onto that, but it gives you an idea what's going on in the marketplace. So if you want to be a multifamily investor, it's the big leagues of real estate investing, right? We're talking about 5 or more units. So you got to be aware of what's going on in the mortgage marketplace. Loan terms, what kind of terms are available? We'll address that in a moment in the next section. As a matter of fact, what kind of amortization periods are available out there? Because that's going to have a major impact on your cash flow. If you go with a shorter amortization period, your cash flow is going to be a lot less because you've chosen a shorter amortization period versus if you go higher than 25 years, which for CMHC you can do. All right, we'll come to that in a moment. And like I mentioned earlier, as part of your homework, you need to find out what are the average cap rates for the kind of properties that you're going for. Okay. I think, loan terms, 1 to 10 years, the amortization period, somewhere between 25 to 40 years. We'll cover that in a second when we talk about conventional financing. But conventional financing, the maximum amortization is 25 years. CMHC, if it's a new building, you can go up to 40 years. Okay, so that'll make a big difference. Okay, what else? Cap rates to calculate value. I mentioned that already. Okay, this stuff, most of you are familiar with it. So loans, obviously, you can have a loan that's interest only, which we'll talk about in a moment. Or you can have a loan that's amortized, which most of us take, but I'll talk in a moment when we talk about financing. Why would you take a loan with interest only, whereby you don't pay the principal down? And some of them can be open, you can pay at any time, some are closed, okay? Most of you would know that. This is the slide that I want you to understand. When you're asking yourself, how much money should I put down? As a rule of thumb, I'm saying as a starting point, 30% of the investment, okay? Are the pictures actually, Jen, I'm just asking now, you see what I'm seeing? Are faces on the slides?
I see, are you asking, I see you as a presenter and I see your slide.
Okay, but our three faces, yours, Jen, and Shawn's are not on top of the slides, are they?
Nope.
Okay, good, because that's what I'm seeing. Sorry, I've got a bit of a funky setup here.
I don't think so.
Below.
Maybe everyone, if you can, or someone, if you can put it in the chat, what do you see? I hope you can't see me taking a selfie for our social media here. I'm probably throwing you off, Pierre-Paul. I'm so sorry.
No, you're not. No. But you guys, what are they seeing? Do you see the slides? Do you see our three pictures on top of the slides?
No, everyone's saying they just.
Okay, sorry. You know what? I should have used my regular setup. When you have multiple screens, you can put our faces elsewhere on a different screen. I usually do that, but okay, we're good. As a general rule of thumb,
I'll stop taking selfies for our social media. Okay.
Don't you worry. It's all good. It's all good. Send me some copies too. Whatever the size, start with about 30% of the initial investment. In that I include 25% as a down payment plus 5% of related costs. And check these costs. Insurance has certainly gone up. I think I've increased insurance. No, you don't pay insurance. That's just the closing cost. But roughly start with that. Okay, start with 30%. You say I'm going to put 25% down, whatever the size and type of property that you figured out based on the values per door that you found out in your chosen market area, and then add to that another 5%. Then after that, and this is where this is beyond the scope of this webinar tonight, but my chart here starts with you. The first box is you, right? The first phase, which is the planning and research, starts with you as an investor. What's your goal? What's your investment horizon? What's your budget? What's your property size and type and level of effort? All this stuff that I talked about, right? And when it comes to risk tolerance, if your risk tolerance is like, oh man, just putting 25% down, what if the market tanks and something like that? Maybe I should put, instead of 25% as a down payment, maybe we should go up to 30% and then an extra 5% for all my closing costs. Or maybe I should go 40% down payment, right? Because then I borrow less money and then I cash flow a lot better if this is your thing. So what I try to train my students to do is figure out what are their individual specific investment goals. Pierre-Paul, I can teach you the mechanics all day long till the cows come home, but I'm not you. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish. If it's to protect your capital and make the most money, while putting a larger down payment when the cost of money is ridiculously cheap. How cheap? Well, it went up the last month or so, but not significantly. We're not talking what I saw when I was, in my teens in the late 20s, late 70s, early 20s, when my parents were talking about my former employer. It used to be called Central Mortgage. Maybe there's old folks like me on this call. Central Mortgage, it used to be called, was CMHC, and interest rates were 18% back then, right? I refinanced the deal in January, and I took a 10-year loan term with CMHC insured financing for 2.01% for 10 years. It's ridiculously cheap money, right? So if you want to make the most money, and it's not your money, once you've got your initial capital down payment and your closing costs, it's the bank's money. And in a moment, I think we'll talk about your spread, right? The cost of borrowing is so low these days, but when you get a cap rate, which is also a yield rate at 5%, in between is my spread. The cost of money is 2%, let's say, and I'm getting a yield of 5%. So I have a nice spread in between of 3%, right? So it doesn't make sense to put a larger down payment if the cost of money right now, at least this is Pierre-Paul's view. Okay. I used to, when I teach, I have different hats because I got to speak as an educator. I wear an underwriter's hat that's got CMHC on it. And then I wear, I do this when I teach. I wear an investor hat. I just put a label on different baseball caps so people know the difference, because that's kind of the fun for me teaching this. I can look at this from so many angles, so as a general rule of thumb, start with that and work your way up or down from that 25% down payment. Basically, that's my best advice. And of course, there's other costs there. Like if you hire a mortgage broker, they'll charge you 1%, somewhere between 1 to 2% of the loan amount. In some provinces, you have a land transfer tax. You got an ESA, which is an environmental site assessment to ensure that there's no, contamination on the site and so on. All right. Okay. Investment strategy, I'm going to go through that very quickly, but again, because of who we have, Jenn and Shawn, we have some novice people. The investment strategy, so I'm not talking about financing strategy, which is my next point. We're talking about investing strategies, right? They're pretty much the same whether you buy larger apartment buildings or small rental properties, right? You can buy, reposition, and refinance, all right? Oftentimes, this requires to get a bridge loan, which I'll talk about in a moment. But whatever your strategy is, you always need to know how you're going to get out. And especially if you have investors, shareholders like I do, how can they get out? But the bank will want to know, all right? So if you refinance, they're going to want to know that that's what you intend to do. If it's a fixer upper, you're going to go in, fix it up, so you get a bridge loan. We'll come back to that in a moment. But the bank is going to want to know how it's going to get paid in 12 months' time, all right? And if you have investors, same idea. They want to know how can they get out. So you need to have an agreement. Usually I use personally a unanimous shareholder agreement, USA, that spells out the rights and obligations of the shareholders and my obligations as well. You can also buy and flip, same difference as with smaller rental properties that you invest in, right? If you want quick cash, right? Maybe you can sell the property right after closing. Maybe you buy it under value, and then that's why you want to flip it right away, because you can make a profit very quickly, right? Okay. That's pretty rare when it comes to apartment buildings of 5 or more units. Very few people are flippers. Okay. But it is possible, right? Why would people sell under market value? Well, it's a foreclosure, right? If the landlord is burned out, maybe they own the property free and clear. They don't care. They just want to sell it quickly. Maybe the property is decrepit. It needs to, it needs some upgrades. Maybe it's an estate sale. I bought one of those buildings. Great. I mean, that was multiple offer situation, but I knew exactly, like, all the stuff that I'm sharing with you tonight is what I apply. Like, I'm pretty, like I said, you just put all my credentials and my experience, former lawyer, CMHC underwriter. I cross my T's and dot my I's because it works, right? But I follow all of this stuff, right? And once I bought an estate sale. I bought it from the daughter. She inherited the apartment building, didn't understand the business aspects of running it. So her rents were below market average and her operating expenses were really high. So when it came time, I knew how high, like there was multiple offers. It was a great building that hardly needed any upgrades. My improvement budget was like $32,000. So I knew how high I could go because even the realtor that had the listing was not a multifamily specialist. So the daughter that inherited that asset went and hired not a multifamily specialist realtor, and he underlisted the asset. But because I had done my homework, I knew that this type and size of property in that market area was selling for how much. I knew how high I could go, and I got it. There were, I think the first round, we had 2 rounds of multiple offers. First round, I think we were about 10, then we were 3. And the reason that I got the deal, because I was on par with the other 2 guys, the 2 offers, we had matching prices. guess what made me get the deal, which I still own to this day? It was my credentials, because I was well prepared. Yes, the fact that I was a CMHC underwriter helped as well, but more so the point that I was prepared. I had all my ducks lined up. So estate sale, right? Somebody retiring from the business. These days, you see a lot of these people, they don't want to put any more money into their buildings. They're family owned. I see a lot of portfolio. I've seen, once in a while, I see their family portfolios that they sell, they put out on the market. All right. And they can use the money for whatever other venture. All right. Buy and hold strategy as well. That's pretty much what I am, right? I'm a long-term holder of apartment buildings, and you want a regular monthly income, whatever it is that you want, or you're in it for the appreciation, etc. Right? But you've got to run the building like a business, because it is a business, and that's how banks are going to look at it, and CMHC. Your job at all times, and this is where we're getting into the financing component tonight. How am I doing for time? Yeah, okay. Got to move faster.
You're all good.
Yeah. Your NOI is your best friend. Okay. If you remember one thing tonight, and again, I invite you to join me tomorrow night, same kind of format, but I'm going to be talking about the magic of cap rates. Your DNOI, which is net operating income before you service your debt. Once you deduct your mortgage, that's your net cash flow. So we're not talking about your net cash flow. We're talking about the income before you service your mortgage. You pay your mortgage. Okay. The NOI is the driver of the value. And every time you increase the NOI by $1, depending on how compressed the cap rates are, the property can appreciate $16 to $25 in areas like Southern Ontario or GTA for every dollar. So it doesn't take much time to increase the value of the asset by that much. Okay. All right. Reposition and sell. And I'm going to switch right away to the, we've talked about that. I'm going to switch to the financing the multifamily properties. So what kind of mortgages are out there for apartment buildings of 5 or more units? First, you have conventional mortgages, which are non-CMHC insured mortgages. Under that, you have bridge financing. Okay. There are a conventional mortgage not insured by my former employer, CMHC. Okay. And then you have, of course, CMHC insured mortgages. These are first mortgage. When I say a first mortgage, now I go back to my days as a lawyer. It means that CMHC insures it, or the bank, and in this case, if it's CMHC insured, if you default on your loan, they're getting paid first, not the second mortgagee. Okay, so that's what we mean, and that's what they want. CMHC and conventional lenders only want first mortgages. They're going to give you only a mortgage rank in the first ranking. Okay, all right. And so it's important in this section to understand the differences between these two types of mortgages, because based on the circumstances of your deal, you may switch back between a conventional and a CMHC insured mortgage, again, depending on your investment goals and so on. Okay. So what would define or would determine the kind of mortgage you're going to want to get, right? Well, how quickly you need to get funding or financing. For example, a foreclosure, which I bid on once, I wound up in court because the owner had lost their property. The bank foreclosed on him. And so the judge wanted a quick closing so as to limit the losses of the mortgagor that lost the property in the first place, or the owner, right, that lost the property. Or you may want to, maybe sometimes you need more time. You're going to have to pick the right mortgage if you need more time to improve the condition in order to what? To stabilize the asset, to maximize your best friend, which is NOI, right? So you need more time to increase the property's value. So you've got to pick the right mortgage that fits the circumstances that you're facing as you acquire the asset. All right. So let us first look at CMHC insured financing. Okay. My former employer. CMHC, as you probably know, just like for principal residences or smaller rental properties, 1 to 4 units, is a mortgage default insurance company. CMHC does not provide financing. It insures the loan against defaults by us investors, borrowers. All right. That's what it does. The lenders, mind you, in exchange for having their loans insured by CMHC, they have to mitigate the risk. For example, at this time of the year, that's when I have the banks on my CMHC insured loans. They're asking for my financial statements to ensure that my loan is still current, that I don't have high vacancies and so on. So, but if they do that, if they administer the loans, and these are spelled out in special conditions, right? In the certificate of insurance that CMHC provides the banks. Then if the banks, meet and, fulfill the special conditions, i.e. administering the loan properly, making sure year after year that they get my financial statements and I'm not, moving towards a default situation, then they are 100% covered by CMHC. All right. The banks have no risk. If their loan is insured by CMHC, the banks have no risk whatsoever. Okay. As long as the conditions are met by the bank. Okay. So in turn, it's advantageous for us. Why? Because then the lenders, since they have no risk, they can charge us a lower interest rate. All right. And everybody wants their loans insured by CMHC, like the banks. From the bank's perspective, that is. Why? Because they have no risk. So there's more competition in the marketplace. Therefore, the rates are significantly better. And for us investors, if we pay a lower interest rate on our loans, that means we get a better return on investment, right? That's why the very large, real estate investors, the REITs, the real estate investment trusts, like the Boardwalk of this world, they all go all day long with CMHC insured financing, right? So you can also borrow more, technically speaking, all right? And maybe I'll leave that for questions later, but CMHC can go up to 85% of their lending value, okay? In practice, CMHC tends to ding us to use a lower lending value than the market value. But generally speaking, you can go up to 85%. So which means that technically speaking, at least on paper, you can put 15% down. But I'm telling you, usually it's closer, somewhere between 75 and 80%, because CMHC uses a lower lending value. But technically speaking, in some cases, you might be able to put a lower down payment if this is your thing, if that matches your investment strategy. The more you borrow, the higher the risk. Keep that in mind. If you're at 85% of CMHC's lending value, it's a higher risk, right? So you've got to keep that in mind. Another significant advantage of going with CMHC, you can amortize the loan up to 40 years. If the building is newer, that's the maximum amortization period for CMHC insured financing. All right. But if you go 40 years, it's restricted to newer apartment buildings. Okay. And you got to make sure that the remaining economic life of the entire building exceeds the chosen amortization period by an extra 5 years. So let's say I have a brand new building and I chose a 40-year amortization period. I need to get a property condition report that's going to indicate that the REL of the entire building is going to be 45 years. All right. It's going to exceed the amortization period by 5 years. Okay. But if you choose a longer amortization, this is a significant benefit, like I mentioned earlier. If you amortize your loan over a longer period of time versus a shorter period amortization period of, let's say, 25 years, you're going to cash flow a lot better. If this is your goal as an investor, is you want that cash flow now, but your cash on cash return on investment is going to be less because, it's going to take you longer to pay off the loan amount. So these are, food for thought that you have to consider. Another good news about CMHC insured financing, it's available anywhere in Canada, whereas conventional financing, as we'll see in a minute, it's not the case. Conventional lenders cherry pick markets where they're going to provide financing. On the downside of CMHC insurance, it's a pain in the butt. I couldn't stress that enough. That's where I come from. My training comes from CMHC. It's a pain in the butt. This is one of my financing applications. You got to cross your T's, dot your I's. Turnaround times are terrible or very long, especially now for a refinancing application. It's going to take months. All right. CMHC does not think outside the box. They don't like deals outside the box. Minimum loan term is 5 years, and you pay an insurance premium. I don't see that as this disadvantage. I'm putting it as a disadvantage here. Here's the thing. The mortgage insurance premium, just like a car insurance, you pay a premium to benefit from that insurance. It's not additional cash that you have to come up with. All right. All the bank is going to do is the amount of premium that you pay is going to be capitalized, is going to be added on to your loan amount, and is going to be amortized within the full amortization period that you've chosen. All right. But you do have to pay a premium. It is an insurance policy. All right. CMHC tends to use a lower lending value. I don't have time to go through this now, but as of June 15th, CMHC now requires investors to provide an appraisal. Until this few months, like January 15th, 2021, CMHC never required you to get an appraisal to confirm value. Now that they do, I believe time will tell that they'll be forced to be closer. The lending value that they'll use is going to be closer to market value. But start with the fact that CMHC is probably not going to accept your market value. And if they do, then you're going to be happy. But generally speaking, I forgot that comment is in here. Scrap that. Now CMHC does require an appraisal for apartment buildings between 5 and 24 units. It's fresh from, I just found out 3 weeks ago or so. All right. So they do need an appraisal now, but I'm not convinced they're always going to use market value as assessed in a formal appraisal. Okay. And they often do that by using a higher cap rate. Okay. What else? So CMHC, I said that earlier, put somewhere between 20-25% down, on CMHC insured deals. Secondary market, they're considered higher risk. So CMHC may ask you to put a larger down payment. In other words, they won't go as high as 85% loan to value. Every deal is assessed based on its merits and the overall risk profile of the market, the property, right? The 4 key risk factors: property, market, valuation, and you, the borrower. So CMHC can amend their underwriting guidelines. These are just general guidelines. This is the free premium. The lower the loan to value, the lower the risk, therefore the lower the premium. This is percentages of the loan amount, okay? Or the loan to value, if you will, okay? So up to 85%, it's a higher risk. Therefore, you've got a higher premium of 4.5% of the loan amount that you're asking, okay? DCR, this is the minimum requirements. This is your NOI divided by my annual mortgage payment. These are annual. So if I buy, let me pick a standard term. Can you see my my cursor? Probably not, eh? Can you see my cursor on the, no?
Yep, we can see your cursor.
Okay. So I'm just taking a standard property, 7+ units. The DCR must be for a term of less than 10 years, 1.3. That means that my NOI divided by my annual mortgage payment, my annual debt service, gives me a ratio of 1.3, which means that my NOI covers my mortgage payments 130 times, okay, 1.3 times, if you will. All right, that's all it means. That means I end up with a cash flow, basically. That's for CMHC insured financing. Okay, I won't get into the nuances because we're running out of time. Okay, as a borrower, you understand somebody most likely will have to provide a personal guarantee. Okay, in order to qualify, like I mentioned earlier, you need to have 25% of the loan amount in personal net worth. All right, and you've got to provide personal guarantees. If, like me, and I think that's what Sherry Chen would recommend as well. I know she does. Most of us create a new corporation to own the asset. All right. That corporation will provide 100% guarantee on the loan. And then in addition, you're going to be asked for guarantees. However, for CMHC, and I'm still talking about CMHC financing, if you put down 35% of CMHC's lending value, in other words, the loan to value is less than 65%, the loan is considered non-recourse, meaning that you don't need to provide personal guarantees. This is important, folks, because if you're going to go and attract capital like me to buy your deals, then a lot of people are going to be reluctant to invest with you in an apartment building if you ask them to provide personal guarantees. Believe me, I've been there many times. So one of the solutions, this is another multifamily hack, is maybe reduce the amount of financing that you're asking below 65% if you go CMHC. Therefore, you won't have to provide, nobody's going to have to provide personal guarantees, okay? All right, conventional financing. This is the non-CMHC insured financing, like I mentioned. CMHC is not involved in this kind of financing, okay? The maximum loan to value, remember, is 75%. In this case, the lending value, and appreciate these terms are super critical. The lending value, by that I mean, what percentage of that value will they agree to finance? All right, so it's 75% of whatever the value CMHC is agreeing upon, or the conventional lender. In this case, it's going to be the lesser the lending value, LV is the lending value, the lesser of the purchase price or the appraised value. Regarding loan terms, same thing as CMHC, CMHC is 5 years minimum. For conventional lenders, somewhere between 1 to 10 years, but the average loan term is always 5 years. The maximum amortization period is 25 years. Jen, remember the maximum amortization period for, or Shawn, for CMHC insured loans? What was the maximum amortization period? Do you recall?
Yep, 40 years.
All right, 40 years. Big difference here, right, guys? Big difference on your cash flow again.
Huge. Yeah.
All right, so this is something, so you see how you can start thinking, okay, when I structured this thing, I gotta think this through and decide whether I want to go CMHC or insured financing, okay? Oh, I forgot the special effects here I put in that presentation. The interest rate that you're going to pay with a conventional lender is going to depend on the size of the loan. Larger loans, the conventional lenders will give a break to those borrowers, right? When we're talking about an institutional investor like a REIT, a real estate investment trust, okay? At the bigger the loan amount, the lower the interest rate. But the interest rates are significantly greater for conventional lenders, roughly by 1%. Let me repeat what I just said. When you go conventional financing, on average, in today's market conditions, and you always have to shop around for these things, you're going to pay an interest rate that, on average, about 1% higher than a CMHC insured loan. Okay, keep that in mind. All right. The minimum DCR we said for CMHC in a moment ago for a standard 5-year loan term is what, 1.3. In this case, it's a little bit lower, less stringent for conventional financing. It's 1.25 versus 1.30 for CMHC. Some advantages of going conventional financing: much faster turnaround time. The lenders are more negotiable on business terms. And generally speaking, the loan to value will be based on the market value as provided in an appraisal. Okay. Some disadvantages, we talked about them already, going conventional financing. Because the maximum loan to value is 75%, you're going to have to put a larger down payment. As I just mentioned, you're going to pay a higher interest rate. And conventional lenders will not go everywhere in Canada and smaller secondary markets, okay? And each lender, like I have here, CMHC's published guidelines on their website. And like I said, they don't have to stick to those, but at least they're published. You kind of have a sense of what they're expecting from you. Not so the case with conventional lenders. They can do whatever they want with your deal. They can change the rules on you whenever they want, and they won't go everywhere across Canada. And of course, one of the disadvantages, if you want to look at it that way, is a shorter amortization period of 25 years, the maximum amortization period. Bottom line here, this chart, I mean to update it with current interest rates, but bottom line here, this is conventional, the first column, conventional. Your cash on cash return on investment after year 17.4% versus look, CMHC 26.9% for CMHC insured loan, okay? The interest rates are lower now, obviously 6%, but this was something prepared by CMHC. I've been meaning to update it. But the point I want you to look at, guys like me, despite the fact that it's a pain in the butt to go CMHC, we go CMHC all day long because of this, a greater return on investment. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So there you go. All right. Okay. I forget these special effects. I have to do them before I can switch. I'll remove that. All right. Bridge loan. Remember, bridge loan is part of financing or conventional financing. You will take a bridge loan. So it's conventional loan. It's never CMHC insured. You pay interest only. That principal amount, loan amount that you've borrowed is never getting paid down during a bridge loan, right? And it is usually a 12-month loan term, very rarely longer than that, okay? The good news about a bridge loan, it can be approved very quickly, okay? But you pay a significantly higher interest rate in the vicinity of 5.5% these days, okay? And when you apply for a bridge loan, you got to tell the lender upfront what your exit strategy is, okay? When would you use a bridge loan? Well, when basically you've got tight deadlines for meeting your conditions on your offer to purchase, or closing deadlines, like in the case of a foreclosure, for example, is one of the instances, right? Or sometimes when you don't meet the project, the building as it is right now, does not meet the minimum DCR, debt coverage ratio of 1.25 for conventional financing or 1.3 for CMHC. So you need a temporary loan, a bridge loan or mezzanine loan to enable you to maybe do some repairs and be able to increase your rents, maybe also shave some operating expenses if there's better economies of scale to be had, all right? But you're not ready to commit the deal to a full standard 5-year loan term. There's extenuating circumstances, okay? Basically, maybe you need time to stabilize the property. This is a term that you want to learn. By that, I mean maximizing the performance of the asset, i.e. Can I increase my rents? Do I need to improve condition? Right? Because who's your best friend, Shawn?
The tenants and the bank.
No, NOI, NOI.
Oh, NOI. Love NOI.
Come to my masterclass tomorrow night. I'll talk about cap rates, but the NOI is the driver of the value. So if you can go in and, you only want to lock your deal into a 5-year loan term when your NOI is at its maximum, because you're going to be able to get a greater loan amount, because by maximizing your NOI, you maximize the value of the asset. All right. So just food for thought, another multifamily hack. Again, there's all sort of things out there. Sometimes you can get up to 85% of acquisition costs on a bridge loan. Why? Because the deal is very strong, the borrower is very strong, and the market conditions are very strong. The lender knows that even though you may even have a negative DCR, that all the risk profile of the deal is so low with a well-established borrower or investor. The lender is confident that the borrower can go in and fix the unit and bring it up to market, to a higher market value. You can take a bridge loan, but you got to make sure that you can do all of that within, usually it's a 12-month loan term for that. Obviously, on a bridge loan, you only pay interest only. All right. The principal amount, if you borrow $1 million during a bridge loan for a 12-month period, at the end of the 12-month period, your loan amount that you owe is still going to be $1 million. And you'll, in the meantime, during that year, you're going to have paid about 5.5% interest rate. I mean, shop around. I haven't done a bridge loan in a bit, so I don't know what the current rates, but it would be in that vicinity pretty much. All right. But you need to tell the lender again, what's your exit strategy, how in 12-month time, the bank is going to get paid out that bridge loan that you took out. Okay. Usually, and this is the kind of stuff that I've got, that I do for my students. I have like all sort of charts, if you take route conventional financing, then you go, then that's what you do after. So, but you got to tell that strategy to your lender. Okay. Okay. Fees, they vary, but somewhere between 1 to 2% of the loan amount. Plus you got a mortgage broker fee, generally speaking, as well for that, because it's the mortgage broker who's going to shop around to find you the right lender that can give you the loan that you need, that will fit the specific circumstances of your deal. Quickly, guys, I'm allowed to say this. I've got a workshop in, oh my gosh, this is still February. Why did I pick that? I forgot that one. It's not February 26th. It's June 11th to the 13th. If you want to join me, you guys, it's an early bird price, but you get the combo package, which is the online course, which I'm completely revamping. And this is my setup. This is actually where I'm sitting right now. And I got a 55-inch screen TV, but it's all my tools, all the stuff that I use to make you look like a professional multifamily investor. Same spreadsheet, checklist system for everything. Due diligence checklist, user-friendly spreadsheet. Like, it's actually the same spreadsheet I used to use at CMHC, except I improved upon it, and all the risk factors. So, because you can appreciate, when I was at CMHC, I needed to go through the analysis of the deals very fast, couldn't skip any of the steps and make mistakes. This is what I replicated. I share with you all my multifamily hacks. If you're not a spreadsheet whiz, which I'm not myself, very user-friendly instructions, green cell, you put a number in there. In the old days, when we were in the pandemic situation, I'd take you through an actual apartment building. You'd meet with other, you'd go through up on the roof, in the boiler room, you'd meet with other stakeholders. I would crunch numbers in class. You'd meet some successful students. We do all of that stuff, you guys, now, but it's all virtual. You get to, in the online course. So what I'm offering tonight is the combination of the on-demand course plus attending the live workshop, which is, again, June 11th to the 13th. And in the online course, in the on-demand course, there's a video of a full building inspection with this man here, Alan Spizak, which is probably one of the best inspectors. You guys, Shawn, and if you need that contact, he's the most amazing. He's in Burlington. But so you view the video of the inspection online, and then we have a full live session like we're doing now with Alan. Then I have a realtor that comes, Chris Davies. Some of you may know him, third generation of multifamily owners and property managers, written a book on apartment buildings. He's going to walk you through the offer to purchase process, this flow chart here, what reports you need to get by when, and all that jazz. And by the way, I've got another chart. This is all stuff you get all this stuff, all the underwriting guidelines, CMHC financing or conventional financing. You get And all weekend, we crunch numbers on actual real deals. And then I have a friend, mortgage broker, Nadeem Khashoggi, is going to come and crunch more numbers with case studies using all the tools that I'm giving you. You get your own copy of the workbook with all the slides. So, I mean, guys, you get all of this stuff. This is the online course, what it looks like, the modules, all the risk factors and all of that. All the PDF documents are attached in the online course. Look, I swear to God, you take this course, you're going to look like a multifamily pro from the get-go. You got one-pager blueprints for each of the modules. All the steps are there. This year, new tools. I'm creating the vault with video interviews of other multifamily expert, George Duby, how to set up your accounting, pest control guy, plumber guy, other mortgage brokers. Just go to my website. Great testimonials. It rates 9 out of 10 for the last 7 years. And guess what? The next one in June, even better, because I'm revamping it all. At the end of the day, who wants to invest in multifamily properties? It's people that want a lifestyle. I take 2 or 3 months off every year. I go skiing. I've skied 25 days. That's not my vacation. It's just my skiing days. Then I'm going to go camping. Like Shawn and Jenn, I travel a lot when we can, obviously. But it's for people that are willing to do the work. There's a lot of work. And again, mindset, people willing to raise their financial mental thermostat. I always say, if you want to fly with the eagles, you cannot think like a pigeon. It's not for tire kickers. And it's not easy. There's a lot of work up front, but the benefits are commensurate. I don't teach people how to attract capital, but the framework that I teach, which is how to assess the risk factors and how to mitigate them, is the same process that I use, or framework, to convince people to invest with me. So it's very, very powerful, because your banker and your investors want to know the same thing. What are the risks? How you've mitigated them. So you don't need prior experience to get started. You don't need to use your money. I use other people's money. Like all of my students here, they didn't have money. They just raised it. And I just want you to know, and I'm ending with this, you guys, and I'll take questions. Apartment buildings, my biggest aha moment when I decided that I wanted to leave CMHC, do you know what it was? It was actually in 2009. Why? Because if you remember, 2008 was the big credit crunch and, big credit crisis and the recession that followed in 2009. Well, I was an underwriter at CMHC at that time, and I have never seen people making so much money with apartment buildings that I saw back in 2009 as an apartment building owner. Why? People, first of all, this is when interest rates dropped significantly back then by 1.5, I believe, in 2009. They never recovered since, and now they're even lower. People who owned apartment buildings, because of the wealth multiplier effect, what I said, for every dollar in increased NOI, the property appreciates by $16 to $25, depending how compressed cap rates are. People had so much equity that were refinancing their properties and pulling millions and billions of dollars out, even the mom and pop owners like myself, and taking that money, buying other apartment buildings or whatever other investment ventures that they wanted to get into. And to this day, this report just shows that the values of apartment buildings during COVID-19 has remained flat and is even increasing now in some markets. And they will be increasing, because we know that the government's been flooding the market with liquidity, with buying back bonds, as you know, a quantitative easing since last year. That leads to inflation, and hard assets like apartment buildings benefit from inflation, but in particular, they not only benefit from inflation, but from the wealth multiplier effect that I talked about, which again, I'll expand on if you want to join me tomorrow. But apartment buildings are by far, according to Forbes magazine, one of the strongest commercial real estate product type in which to invest during a recession. If you can make an apartment investment in a downturn, the rewards will far outpace any real estate investment you could make. All right. So all of that I'm offering you today in this early bird price, and there's limited seatings, is worth over $16,000, right? The workshop itself, usually I sell for $34.97. It's 3 days. It's intense. I barely scratched the surface. But in this deal that I'm offering, you also get the on-demand course, and you get lifetime access to, and you get a copy, my financing application template in a Word format. That means that you don't necessarily have to hire a mortgage broker. That would charge you 1% of the loan amount. So easily worth over $10,000. I have a great lifestyle. This is a trip we took flying to kids. All of that, you guys, for $24.97. So I'll put the link down, later if you're interested in that. So, but love to see you, but it's for people who are determined, right? It's not for everybody, you guys. So that's kind of it. I'm ready for questions, you guys. Am I still sharing my screen? Sorry, I went fast there, but I hope I didn't go overboard, you guys, with my pitch, you guys. But you know, if you're interested, I'd love to help you.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's a lot of really good information. That's, you know, it's important, I think, for most people who aren't buying multifamily, like larger multifamily, it's really daunting, right? Like if you're going from buying a single family home or a duplex or a triplex, these bigger multifamily apartments are a whole different animal, right? And if you don't know what you're doing, it's very, very daunting and scary. Once you do understand the nuances and what you're saying there, and you get to understand what's required, it really isn't that big a deal, but you need to understand it before you can get into it. So that's amazing.
It's not rocket science. I'd like to say I'm Einstein, I'm super smart. I'm not, but obviously I've got, you know, a leg up given my background, but anybody can look. I showed you pictures very quickly. They were regular folks and they're doing it, but you know, so if I can help you, I'm more than happy. Yeah, it is June 11th to the 13th. I forgot that I put a slide there, forgot to change the date.
I
So
put
I'm
the
here.
updated date in the chat so people can see, but where do they register if they
I will
want
put
to
the
do
link as we're speaking, so I can start answering questions. And if you want to run the questions by me, I'll just put the link in the meantime in the
Perfect.
chat box.
Okay, so let's go through some of the questions here. And guys, if you had put your question in the chat, if you could go ahead and put it in the Q&A. So on one side is the chat, on the other side, if you look at the bottom, is the Q&A section. So I'm going to start back here. Okay, so this was an anonymous question, was posted at 7:30, so it gives you an idea of where in your presentation it came up. For the larger buildings, isn't the retail investor competing against pension funds and insurance companies for these buildings and causing high prices?
So that's a very good question. So I don't know where that you know, that person is coming from, but your competition will be, there's always competition, right? This is a prized asset. There's no doubt about it. But the REITs and the investment, the pension funds are going for the very large assets, the apartment buildings, the high rises that you see in larger cities and stuff like that. So they don't go after the smaller 10 suiter, 20 suiters. So in that regard, that's where the competition is when you're of that size, like 100 unit buildings, usually a high rise. So at that level, at my level, I don't have that kind of competition, you know. So.
Jay Julian asks, I was under the impression if the deal sounds good and is profitable, it would be financed.
Well, yeah. Yes, absolutely. But that's, so part of that is obviously when I said the risk profile of the overall deal, there's always 4 key risk factors in any real estate deal. Property, so property condition, market, what's the market like? Is it an ascending or descending market? Value, are you overpaying for the asset or are you underpaying, which is good because then there's more money profit factored in. And then the investor is the 4th key risk factor. So what banks will do, they'll look at the overall picture of these 4 key risk factors. And accordingly, let me give you an example, right? Because I know you guys are in Ontario, you're in a fantastic market. It's my job to follow various markets across Canada. Like I said, until the pandemic, I was out in Ontario regularly, many times a year, and including giving workshops like this. But if you're going to buy an asset in, just to take an extreme example to really paint a picture, in Kirkland Lake, which is an hour east from where I was born, on the Quebec side of the border, right on the border between Ontario and Quebec. The risk profile in Kirkland Lake is a lot greater than London, right? Or Toronto or, you know, Hamilton. So therefore the bank and CMHC, whether conventional lender or you know, doesn't matter, they will use a higher cap rate to mitigate the risk, which again, I encourage you to join me tomorrow night for that. But by using a higher cap rate, the values and cap rates move in opposite direction. The higher the cap rate, the higher the cap rate, the lower the value, and vice versa. So the lower the cap rate, the higher the value. But if they perceive a higher risk in your deal, that's one of the ways that they can lower the amount of financing or the loan to value, the amount that they'll lend you. So that's how they would play with that. But yes, they can make adjustments. oftentimes when I was speaking at Rain, Don used to joke, here's the guy, Pierre-Paul, when he was introducing me on stage that, can say yeah or nay to your loan. We rarely declined loans. We would mitigate the loan and reduce the loan amount that we would lend until we were comfortable, basically. But if it's a good deal, I've had my first building that I bought, and by the way, I bought it on December 5th, 2008, just before the Great Recession. So it was a great story that I share in my workshop. But I did get 85% of my purchase price at that time. I was buying right at a valuation that CMHC was comfortable with. I would not do that, by the way. I would not go up all the way to 85% loan to value, not in this market in Alberta, which is more volatile because overly dependent on oil and gas. In an area like you guys, yeah, absolutely. Like anyway, I can answer, but I think you guys are in for a fantastic ride. Whether it's small rental properties or apartment buildings of 5 or more units in Southern Ontario, because the moment this pandemic is over, the federal government is going to open the floodgates to immigration, and people are going to want to go out and spend money. So you're going to have a great boom, is what I predict personally.
And it's good that we're getting prepared.
The link in the chat box. Did you see that? And I'm putting them. Can people see the link?
Yes, I think so. We had the link there. I can copy it and paste it again so it stays fresh. We had a question.
People are also looking for the link for tomorrow night as well.
Yeah, I'll do that. That's the next one. I just wanted to confirm. Thank you, Jen. You're doing great for me. I appreciate the assistance. So I can focus on the questions while I'll pull the other link right now.
Perfect. Okay. So Omran was asking if the recording will be shared. Yes, we do have the recording. We will be posting it to our YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked that out yet, I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you to go to our YouTube channel. Maybe not right this second, but right after this is done, I want you to subscribe to our channel. We're trying to grow that channel. We record all of our ONREIA events, and it usually takes a couple days for us to get them uploaded there, but that will be available for you, okay? Yeah, so another question about how to join the meeting tomorrow night about cap rates and if there is a cost.
No. I'm putting the link right now, Jen. So just click.
Excellent.
There you go. No. And I have a bunch of them. I had one last week on specifically financing. So some of the stuff obviously I went greater length because it was specifically on financing. But in a case study, I think I have a case study on that one.
Perfect. Awesome. So there's the link, guys. And you know what? We can just do not see the link. Let's see here. If maybe
Pierre, you did it to all panelists, not to the attendees.
Okay.
So we need to just change the direction from to panelists to all panelists and attendees.
I've got it. Hang on. I'll do it for you right here.
Okay.
So here, guys, here's the first link. So this is the link to join the masterclass in June. So that was June 11th to the 13th.
Yep.
Okay, that's the first link that you guys are seeing. And the second link, I'm going to pop in right here. This is the link to join tomorrow night, talking about cap rates.
You're the best. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, no problem at all. All right.
That's the brains of the operation.
And you know what, maybe if it's okay with you, Pierre-Paul, can I add that to our ONREIA
Of course.
to the YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so Jorge was asking, what is OPM? I did put that in the chat, but it might have got missed. So OPM stands for other people's money. And I think a lot of newer investors think that's like a scam or something, but maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Maybe Shawn, why don't you talk about OPM and how you've used it to sort of move forward in the business?
Yeah, we so much like Pierre-Paul, we use OPM quite significantly in our operations, both for flips and also for multifamily investing as well. So all that means is that it's not your cash. So it comes from a different investor, it comes from a group of different investors, and you're using that investment money or other people's money for down payment, renovations, etc., whatever you need it for. Right. So it's just that it's not coming from you and it's not coming from the bank.
Right. And it's totally legit.
I mean, that's how all of us do it, right, guys? So, and again, maybe if I can share a story on that, like I said, that's why I make a point of, saying where I come from, right? Like I said, I'm number 9 of a family of 12 kids in some mining town, northwestern Quebec. I was not born in money, and when I say you got to raise your financial mental thermostat, and you guys do a good job as well of inspiring your audience, Shawn and Jenn, it's our job. But, you know, we put limitations on ourselves that we shouldn't. And I got to tell you, for me, I'm not done. I keep pushing my mind and getting out of my comfort zone. So, but that's what you got to do. And it's it's very legitimate. You put agreements in place. Like I mentioned, unanimous shareholder agreement. You create a corporation. It's all above board. I've got a professional bookkeeper, a professional accountant. Like I said, I have to provide my financial statements to the bank. It's all above board. No, I'm not. No, it's not a scam.
Alana asks, so this was just after 8:15. So I'm not quite sure where you were in the presentation there, but her question is, if CMHC insures it, doesn't that cost negate the lower mortgage percentage?
No, that's what I said. Let me read. It's a good question, by the way. I appreciate the question. The cost is the insurance premium. What I said, and of course, there's a lot of content, so I went fast there. I said that you recover the insurance premium within 5 years because you pay such a lower interest rate. And now the interest rates are, you heard what I said. I got an interest rate for a 10-year loan term. I think the loan amount was $1.8 million, 2% for 10 years. I mean, it's like ridiculously cheap money. It's a little bit, it would be higher now, but maybe 2.25 probably right now still is ridiculously cheap. So even though you pay premium, and like I said, the amount of the premium, I think my premium, I'm going to go by memory here because I do have the financing application, but I don't have the actual commitment letter and all that. But I think the amount of the premium was about $74,000. I did not have to come up with $74,000. I had to, the lender increased my loan amount by the amount of the premium. So therefore, what we call that in the industry, the premium was capitalized, was added on to the loan amount that I was refinancing. That's all. So it's not extra cash. And again, where obviously this is only an hour and a half kind of webinar, but that's where in class we play live with the spreadsheet with different scenarios. Some of the advantages of going with CMHC, remember, you can go to a longer amortization, therefore you're going to cash flow better, right? Or maybe you don't want the cash flow, you want to pay that loan down faster because the interest rate is so low. So you go with a shorter amortization period. So you can play with that based on your investing goals.
Awesome. Good. Megumi asks, does CMHC have a big fee to break a mortgage?
Oh yeah, it's not CMHC, by the way. Remember, CMHC does not lend you the money; they insure the loan, but the banker does. Absolutely. And that's not just a CMHC question. Any lender, right? If you break your term, you're going to pay a very hefty penalty. It's usually not worth it. It's horrendous. So yeah, you can't break a loan term. So the reason, that's why many of us, see, in my particular case, I went with the 10-year loan term. Maybe I can expand on that. It's going to, paint a picture. I went with a 10-year loan term. It's a bit unusual. It's because on the one hand, the interest rate was so low. That asset I've owned, this was my third time refinancing. I didn't refinance the last time. I think I just renewed. But I'm going to own that asset forever because it's completely stabilized. I have no major capex to put in, no roof. The roof is going to last me another 20 years because I replaced it. I have no major expenses. I know where my investors are going. They're all in it for the longer haul. They have a matching long-term investment horizon. So we want to hang on to that asset. In 10 years' time, at 2% interest rate, we're going to have like a couple million or more in equity.
Yeah.
And okay, well, let's refinance. Let's pull, I don't know, a couple $100,000. Let's pay ourselves. Let's go to Costa Rica, right, Jenn? I'm going to join you in Costa Rica. This is like, I take my kids to Europe 5 years ago for 3 weeks, rented a house and an apartment in Paris, one in the south of France, one in Barcelona, visited our friends in Switzerland. Do you know what I'm saying? And there's no end to that. However, let me open a parenthesis here. So CMHC has flexibility in that regard, but yeah, if you break the loan or you break, you want to refinance in the middle of a loan term, you're going to pay a hefty penalty. Let me backtrack a little bit. We're going over now, but this is a new policy as well from CMHC. Since COVID-19, CMHC restricts the use of equity takeout funds. When you refinance, you built equity, you want to take a portion of that equity out. Since July of last year, as a result of COVID, CMHC really restricts the use of equity takeout funds to if you're paying a construction loan, like a guy like you, Shawn, if you took a construction loan out, you want to pay it out using that equity takeout money, you can. if it's to complete some energy efficient, improvements to make it more energy efficient. I'm going by memory now. What else? If you want to build social housing, which the federal government, CMHC, is trying to encourage, but the one thing they don't want you to do now, but nothing is cast in stone, and that portion, if I say publicly, am I going to be in trouble? One thing that the new policy says is that you cannot use that to pay out dividends to shareholders.
Right.
How enforced this is?
We'll leave it at that.
But some lenders will, some won't. And what else can I say? Let's get into some accounting stuff. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer. However, when the way I structure, and this is kind of advanced stuff, but if we're okay with this, I'll go ahead. The way I'm structured, I set up a corporation, and the investors provide a loan to the corporation to acquire the asset. So when I pay them back, if I'm paying them back that money that they loan to acquire the asset, is that a dividend? No, it's a loan repayment in my books. Now that's Pierre-Paul's interpretation, because the policy, if I recall correctly, and I maybe can put a link, Jen, I'll see if I can put it up while we speak and while I answer the next question. I believe the policy says that you're not allowed to use equity takeout money when you refinance to pay out dividends to shareholders. But a loan repayment is not a dividend. My interpretation of accounting, but I think I'm right.
I like that interpretation.
Okay. While we do that, I'll try to see if I can find it and put it up. But yeah, my job is to be current, by the way, guys. When I teach this stuff, so I refinance, I'm about to get into an acquisition mode again now. And, but I talk to lenders. I have this unique relationship with them and mortgage brokers. So my job is always to be in the know of these things when I teach. And the stuff I teach applies across Canada, no difference. The only thing is market conditions are different. You have to do your homework there, but the mechanics of what I teach is the same. Another question, Jen, while I try to find this.
Absolutely. So Daryl asks, how do you get the tenants out and increase the rent roll when tenants are allowed to move back in after renovations at the same rent amount in Ontario?
Yeah, clearly an Ontario question. Sorry to laugh. I went to law school in Ontario. I graduated from Ottawa U, and I used to be a caretaker. So I used to rent units in my building. So I do know. I'm aware of the legislation. I don't have a perfect answer for you there, right? It's by attrition. I mean, I know there's all sort of you guys, Shawn, probably somebody that's in Ontario dealing with that legislation can answer that question better than me. It's by whatever means you can. In Alberta, though, it's one of the greatest things in Alberta. The only provincial limitation is that you can only increase your rents once a year. But the province, unlike Ontario and many jurisdictions in Canada, does not dictate by how much the rental increase can be. Okay, so how would you get rid of a tenant, Shawn? I mean,
well, yeah, I think what Daryl means is that if he's asking tenants to leave because he's significantly renovating the building, they've got the opportunity to come back at the same rent when that renovation is done. However, there are ways you can do that. If you, for instance, cash for keys, if you get the tenants to agree to leave for a certain amount of money, then you get them to sign an N12 and you pay the money. And then they have basically said that they are leaving on their own accord. So that's one way to get around it.
I mean, people do, right, Shawn? Like,
100%. Yeah.
Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
all the time.
I know. I mean, because I talk to people, I know it's done. And it's just, yeah, I think, I've heard also people offer them a sum of money. Like I said, please attend the class tomorrow night. The wealth multiplier effect. I teach by case studies. Like I don't want to be some guy flapping his jaws in front of people. There's no value in that. So I teach by case studies, and I've got case studies. But it's worth it. Like especially in a market like yours, if it wasn't so far away from my beloved mountains where I spend a lot of time all year round, I'd be investing like you guys, Jen and Shawn, and you guys out there for sure.
Awesome. We're going to go to Kim's question. How is the DCR affected for mixed use buildings?
We need to specify what we mean by mixed use, but I'm going to make an assumption and answer based on my assumption. Mixed use might be let's say an apartment building at the bottom, there's some retail spaces, commercial spaces, maybe a dry cleaner, restaurant, hairdresser, something like that. Okay. That's commercial, which is looked at differently and it is being risked differently as well. Let me ask Shawn, since I can't speak to anybody else, or Jen, do you think that the commercial space, and then upstairs you have regular apartment buildings, okay? So that's mixed use. You got commercial at the bottom, like the retail spaces, hairdresser, whatever, dry cleaner. And then above you've got apartment buildings, that's commercial, residential above. Do you think, Shawn or Jen, that the bottom space, the commercial space, is higher risk or lower risk?
Higher risk.
Higher risk. Therefore, they're going to use a higher cap rate in valuing that, right? Because they're going to ding you. They're going to use a lower lending value to minimize that risk. So from a DCR point of view, I forget because I don't do that anymore, but I think they would normally, I would expect a higher DCR requirement because it's higher risk. So it might be something like 1.4, 1.5. At this point, let's see if I can find something in the guidelines, but that's how it would be looked at for sure. It would be probably a higher DCR. So that's a pretty advanced question. It's a great question, but I'm going to see if I find anything. Oh yeah, here we go. And I was right. Sorry, it is. And I showed it to you earlier for the non-commercial space. Remember where I was pointing out to you in the guidelines in my slide deck? I pointed out 1.3 for CMHC. The non-residential portion would be 1.4 DCR for a 10-year plus loan term, or 1.5 for a term of less than 10 years. So that makes sense, right? Logically, and you see how my mind, I had to question because I don't do these guys anymore, but the process mentally, higher risk, therefore higher DCR requirement. Hopefully that answers the question. I'm still looking for that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think so. So this is a question. Now, no one has a crystal ball here, but are we going to see declining prices in condo and detached houses due to new rules? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's outside my area of expertise. Okay, I got the guidelines that I mentioned to you earlier about appraisals. I think I can put it in the chat box or not. Is it taking it? It's not a link, eh? Maybe it won't. No, it won't. Should I go and share my screen for a moment and show that, because it's a bit more. Is it okay? Okay, I'll see if I've got it now. Let me just do, sorry, multitasking, right? Thank God for them to be there right now, because although I should have set this up like I usually do when I do my own stuff. Hang on, I'm just going to share screen. I'm pulling the thing, and then you are here, multiple screens open. I got to move you up so I can press the button, share screen. Sharing screen. Do I see my guideline? Yes, I do. And we're in business. Share. Okay. Can you see it now? Yes, you can.
Yep.
This is the one. Oh, but this is not the one I wanted. This is the one about the appraisal. Well, it's still relevant. We did mention it. So I'll go and find the one about the equity takeout use. But you can see here as where's the date? For units 5, where is it?
Yep, 5 to 24.
5 to 24 update right there. And starting January 15th, they require a current appraisal report. So that's kind of a big deal. It never was the case. So I think that CMHC will be obligated to use market value. Okay, why don't I take another question? I picked the wrong, so why don't I share another question while I find the other advice?
All right, here we go. Dan DeVoe. Hi, Dan. Dan's asking, what's the best strategy to find deals on buildings? A commercial real estate broker?
So let's be very clear. That's why. So let me go back to that distinction I made earlier. Commercial is commercial, and then there's commercial residential. What I have knowledge in and I invest in myself is commercial residential, i.e. apartment buildings. So I'm not sure what he means by that, but if it's commercial residential, yes, a mortgage broker that specializes in apartment buildings is what you want to work with, who you want to work with. I'm not sure if that answers the question. Do you think it does?
I think so.
Yeah, that's what he's looking for.
Yeah.
Oh, I got the new advisory. Okay, I found it. So good. Now I've got to find technology. Well, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. I'm an old fart. Okay, share again. And yes, there it is. Fantastic. And you can see it now?
Yep.
You can only see the directive, right? The First National document, is that what you can see? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this happens to be First National, one of the lenders that I use, but they're just talking about CMHC's guideline. Let me enlarge it because a little bit at my end. Okay. And basically they're saying, and this is since last year, July, that with details, what CMHC refers to as special measure have not been announced, that the use of refinance proceeds are now limited to one or more of the following purposes: purchasing another apartment building, construction, capital repairs or improvements, including increased energy efficiency and accessibility, securing permanent financing. For example, somebody has a construction loan, or certain other uses determined on a case-by-case basis. Notably, what will not be permitted pending industry consultations: equity takeouts, distributions to equity holders, which CMC considers an improper use of government resources. This is unheard of, like I said, and how applied is it or enforced? I don't know. So, there you go. Other question, maybe, Jen?
Yes, we're going to just take a few more here because we're already at 9 o'clock. Pree's asking, from your experience, are lenders open to providing bridge financing for a property with units that are under rented? The strategy to increase NOI would be an uplift on rents that require a plan with the tenants. So would this perhaps be considered risky, especially in the Ontario market?
Well, first of all, whoever asked that question is a great question. They did get what I was trying to say tonight. That was exactly how I addressed it and presented the phenomenon. Whether in Ontario it'd be considered a high risk or not, that depends on the market conditions. So I cannot answer that generic question, right? Hence, that's what I'm saying. You got to look at the market fundamentals. If the market, and look, I mean, this is just Pierre-Paul's opinion. Like I said, when I do these things, I definitely need to have several hats. This is a personal opinion, but I think I know a few things. You guys are headed for frickin' boom. I think across Canada, but we have all this pent up demand on everything. We don't travel except Jenn and Shawn, apparently. I'm envious, but people don't travel. People are not spending money. People are sitting on a ton of money because Trudeau was overly generous with the COVID payments and all of that. People are, I mean, you've seen what's going on in the market, the residential market. It's on freaking fire. Everything's going to be on fire. So it's an ascending market. So you got to pick your time where in the market phase where it's at. Now I think it's starting to pick up in some areas. Like I said, home ownership side it's on fire. It's crazy. 20% valuation increases since January across Canada on average. So that's huge. That's insane. So yes, that would be the right strategy to go in, find ways that when I say big lift effect, in one of my slides, it's the expression that my current property manager calls that the multiply effect is huge. Like, let me give you an example. The case study, one of the case studies that I use in my workshop, it's one of my buildings from beginning to end. I did a bridge loan, and in 10 months, I took a bridge loan out and I increased my rents. I shaved my operating expenses by installing low flow toilets and stuff like that, and aerators on the taps. I pulled out in 10 months, $230,000 in 10 months. So yeah, so that is the right strategy. So whoever asked the question did ask the right question. They understand that's why you would not want to commit that to a 5-year loan term, because you don't know what market conditions are going to be like. However, remember, if you go and get the highest loan amount, which I don't recommend, and ask me why, because you just never know. Real estate, like I hang out with, some of you may know, they're very good friends of mine, and I've spoken there many times. Actually, my last live speaking engagement was in Toronto at Rockstar. Tom and Nick Raza, with people that I love very much. So they're freaking hearts of gold, and they know their stuff. Well, their family lost at one of those podcasts that Tom and I did with Nick. I reminded him of describing the situation in Alberta, that their family almost lost everything in the 90s, right? So it's real estate investing, you folks. You can't take a short perspective on this, right? Like for me in Alberta, it's not fun, but things are going to come back. I mean, I don't want to get political on you, especially when you're in Eastern Canada, but I'm a former Easterner, but things are going to come back in Alberta, not like they used to, but there's some good days across Canada about to happen. So in that situation, I need to read the market right to where the market is headed next. But as Shawn said, or you, Jen, nobody can predict with 100% certainty. So you got to mitigate that risk. You got to be reasonable. Don't be overly optimistic is what I would caution you against. That's personal opinion now.
That's a great piece of advice. We'll just take maybe one more question here so we can wrap up. Actually, one more on top of this one. The memo that you had posted that we had just seen when you did your screen share, is that available publicly, or is that like an insider?
I can make it, but I'm just not sure how to share it here.
Yes, it was publicly shared. It was sent out.
It was, okay.
So it was it is, but I mean, so one way or the other, Jen, I'll send it to you. You can send it to people because it's not going into the link. It's a PDF.
Right. Okay. No worries.
Knowledge. Absolutely. Knowledge. Yeah.
Okay. So we will do one more here. Oh, so Magnus was asking, how do you access or apply for CMHC insured financing?
Oh, I like the question. So I go straight to the lenders. So borrowers, i.e. investors, are not allowed to talk to CMHC. Even me, even though I still know plenty of people at CMHC, I'm not allowed to talk to CMHC. It's kind of an odd relationship. We investors pay for the mortgage insurance premium to CMHC because CMHC pockets the money, and it's a cash cow. Did I say that apartment buildings are a low risk asset? To this day, they don't default during COVID. They didn't much in 2009 during the Great Recession. So it's a cash cow for CMHC. All these premiums go straight. And I don't know why they put stringent rules like that. Well, I do know, because the bureaucrats, like I was one of them, in their cubicles, don't know the difference that we know in the real world. So they're painting multifamily world with the same brush as smaller rental properties or principal residences. They don't know the difference. They're literally in Ottawa, OSFI, the Office of the Financial Superintendent of Financial Institutions. So, so what was the question? I lost my train of thought. What's the question?
How do you go and apply? Yeah.
Oh yeah. So the relationship is between the lender and CMHC. So in my case, do I want to pay 1% of $2-3 million for a mortgage broker? When I teach people, and I used to be the guy on the inside telling the mortgage broker or the bank, if you want me to approve your loan, this is what you got to give me. No, I prepare my own financing application, thereby saving me 1% of the loan amount. And you get that as part of a bonus in my course. And so, but the relationship is with the lender. So you can do two things. You can do what I do, which is to go straight to a mortgage lender, or you can go through a mortgage broker. Okay, but the mortgage broker will charge you a fee, roughly 1% of the loan amount. The bank will also charge you a fee, but in my case, it's minimal because my financing applications are perfect.
So just to clarify what you're saying there for everybody is, instead of going to a mortgage broker, you are going directly to a bank like Royal Bank or First National.
Correct.
Or Scotiabank. That's the difference, right? Yes.
This may be a big aha moment because most people tend to believe that they need to go through a mortgage broker. This being said, notice that at my workshop, I bring a mortgage broker. Why? To bring different perspective, okay? And we don't always agree because in real world, people don't always agree in the industry, okay? But they are very well equipped to also shop around for the type of mortgage and lender that may fit your specific circumstances. For example, Shawn, like taking you because you're a developer, when you take on these projects, you would likely do something like a bridge loan. It does present a certain higher risk because you got some, I'm just making assumptions, so maybe not the case, but you got upgrades to conduct, to do some repairs and all of that. So there's a higher risk while this takes place. You probably have a higher vacancy rate during that time. So the mortgage broker knows different kind of lenders and will shop around to find a lender whose appetite matches your project and the risk profile of your deal. How's that? So there's great merit, but a guy like me, my job, my mission, by the way, and this is a very important mission to me. I'm blessed to have this insider knowledge and to have figured this out and all that. My mission is to democratize the access to multifamily investing in Canada. I'm in it for you because I made it. And one of the great quotes, I just found it out a couple of weeks ago, success unshared is failure. That's why Jen and Shawn are here teaching you every month, and I'm here. We want people to succeed because we have succeeded ourselves. Comes with, you know, a lot of work. But yeah, so that's people don't have to hire a mortgage broker. It's a lot of work. This takes me a good month. You know, I used to be a lawyer, a litigator. It's got that. It is the real thing. And you get my own application template if you take my course.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Shawn, did you have any questions before we wrap up?
I did actually had some questions written down, and they were answered during the questions. So there were really good questions that were brought forward, and okay. People were paying attention and they were taking down notes, obviously, which is great.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you so much, Pierre-Paul, for joining us tonight. There was so much content, so much great insider knowledge that you were able to share with us this evening. So thank you so much for joining us and for answering all of these questions. Sorry we didn't get to quite everyone's, but like Shawn said, tons of great questions were asked tonight. So, and thank you to everyone who joined us and who stayed on. I think we're, what are we, 9:15 now? So it's you know, another marathon session with ONREIA, but that just goes to show how great the content is and how really invested people are in learning more. So thank you, Pierre-Paul, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm going to be posting, so I will send an email out after probably in the next day or two, and I will, well, I'll try and send it out first thing tomorrow, and it'll have the links for tomorrow night's event. Remember, that is, what is the name of that event? Tomorrow night.
The magic of cap rates revealed. Perfect.
So I will put that link in the email. If you don't get my emails, check your junk folder. Sometimes they get thrown there. What else did I want to say? Shawn, do you have something to say?
Next month. When is our scheduled meeting for next month?
Right, next month. So get out your phone and open up your calendar, and you are going to join us again on Thursday, May the 20th. So that is our May ONREIA event. As always, it's at 7 o'clock. I will be letting you know who the speakers are shortly, but put that in your calendar, Thursday, May the 20th. I do have an ask. So before you wrap up tonight, before you turn off your computer, please head on over to either our YouTube channel or our Facebook page, or both if you want a gold star from me, and give us a like and a follow. We are trying to grow our YouTube channel. The more people that we can help, the better it is. We want to try and push out as much information as we can, because as Pierre-Paul said earlier, there's a lot of people that are like, this is sort of what they need at this next step in their journey, right? You know, if you've got a business that maybe has not done so well during COVID, you've got some family situations maybe that you need to prepare yourself for. Real estate investing has really, you know, it's blessed us. And if we can help you and we can help others get to that, you know, success rate, then we would love to do that. Someone's just asking for the links. So if you scroll up in the chat there, you will still be able to see the links for tomorrow night, as well as for the live event in June, but I will be posting those to all of our places. I'll post it on Facebook, I'll post it in the email, and I'll put it on our YouTube channel description, okay? So you will get those links. And I think that's it for this evening. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone. Be well. Cheers.
All right, have a great evening, everyone. And bye, Shawn. I hope I see you in Ontario soon.
Well, the weather's too nice down here, so I think it'll be staying a while.
Maybe you can join us from Florida next month and do a tour of the project we have going on down there.
There you go.
All right, everyone. Have a great evening.
Have a good night. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.